My friends, good evening. This decade is full of dangers. I think a good number of European countries won't make it through. I'm thinking of France, I'm thinking of the United Kingdom, I'm thinking of Germany. These are countries that will probably be destroyed by 2030. And that's actually a goal that was widely discussed 5 years ago, if you remember, the Great Reset, the COVID period. You will own nothing and you will be happy. And of course, any method is acceptable to achieve this goal. We know that the decade started with COVID, and now today we're literally heading into a third world war. And all of this is happening against a backdrop of climate issues and scams and an increasingly blatant, increasingly brutal, savage capture of the resources of European countries and peoples. So, just a few news items before we start to give you a bit of the atmosphere. This is from today's Financial Times. So, we're looking at the seizure of Russian assets here. So there are Russian assets that were frozen in 2022, 200 billion euros. And then, of course, they want to take them and then use them. You should know that the purpose of creating this climate of war is precisely to seize assets. But it's not just Russian assets. For example, there's savings. Savers in times of war can simply see their savings seized or requisitioned, or even without any justification. The terms that will be used are that it will be released, or it will be activated, or it will be something else. They might not use the word seized, but do you understand? Quite simply, it will disappear. We can also have the freezing of democratic process as well, what's left of them anyway. We can have, for example, situations where there are no elections. For example, we don't change presidents during a war. We could be in a situation where there's martial law. Then you see the state, remember the time of COVID, we're in an emergency situation. And then instead of having a parliament, because that's how it goes, we might have a committee, right? An expert committee, an emergency committee, generals, whatever, who make the decisions. Then, of course, if we speak up, we'll be called idiots, we'll be called collaborators. Don't worry, the press will find the words, the labels to put on those who don't agree with this state of affairs. Today, we learn that Denmark has decided for the war effort that the retirement age will be raised to 70. In reality, this has been going on since the beginning of this decade. If you look, you'll find articles from 2020, 2021, where the European Union is calling to raise the retirement age to 70. So today, they're taking advantage of a war to actually implement an agenda that was already planned in advance, as wars are often used for that purpose. That's really the goal. That's the purpose of starting them. It creates a lot of, indeed, it causes a lot of deaths. It ruins a lot of people. It's the people in general who suffer. But be careful, it's going to create a lot of big fortunes. It's going to create billionaires, all that. And then, of course, politicians are not going to send their children to the front. Although maybe they'll send them for 45 minutes, just enough time to take a photo, for the record and then get some medals. You see what I mean? So yes, we're heading in the wrong direction. I'd like to point something out to you. Let's do a quick mental calculation. To illustrate, sorry, I'm scratching my eyes. I'm starting to get allergies. Maybe it's hay fever. And I stopped taking medication for that several years ago. Actually, my allergies have calmed down since I stopped taking the medication, which is pretty paradoxical, really. Before, I even ended up taking prescription medications, which you can't get without a prescription, and they kept getting stronger. Then suddenly I stopped all the medication, and so the allergies too. So I got a lot weaker, but around that time my ears were itchy, the back of my throat, my eyes, but it was nothing compared to what I had a few years ago when I was taking the medication. So let's get back to our story a little bit. We're going to do a mental calculation. So the mental calculation is as follows. The Second World War caused about 80 million deaths. It ended about 80 years ago. 1945, 2025. Let's imagine, just as a thought experiment, let's imagine it never happened. Let's imagine that the Second World War never happened, but it was replaced by a series of wars, let's say wars every year. Every year there was a war in Europe, a war that lasted, for example, a month for 80 years. Well, how many? Those quick wars, those lightning wars, those wars that last a month. Every year. Doivent-elles tuer to maintain today's average? You quickly do the mental math and you realize 80 million deaths, 80 years. Well, that gives you 1 million deaths per year to maintain the average or the pace of World War II. You can see there the scale of the slaughter. And what you also see is that Europe is an extremely dangerous, extremely unstable area. So yes, for a few decades, it can give you the impression of being a peaceful, calm place and all that. But in fact, it carries within itself the DNA of the next great war. And today, what Trump is doing, it's very possible, it's likely that he will pull out of NATO, because he said to himself, well, as de Gaulle once said in another context, I have understood you. You want war, I understand. You want war, you want to kill each other, it's a tradition, you do it regularly. Now you do it without me. What I do is I stay out of it, I let you kill each other. When you're done and things calm down, we come in and sell you reconstruction contracts. I mean, the guy is very pragmatic. Now, if I go back to World War II, that's pretty much what the Americans did too. Churchill at the time, who was like today's Starmer, kept going to the Americans and asking them to get involved in the war. Notice that the war salesman, the promoter of war, is always the United Kingdom. But this time, by the way, they've taken a much more serious turn than before, because before they always tried to cause problems elsewhere, but not necessarily at home. This time they're going all in and literally putting themselves right out front, whereas before they didn't do that. So I was saying that what happened is that during World War II, we had an ally of Germany. At the time, Germany hadn't attacked the United States, and for good reason, because they knew that if they attacked the United States, it would bring the US into the war and further strengthen the Allied side, the side that was against them. That meant having another American power on their back, and they didn't want that. So the Germans hadn't attacked. The Americans? But what is an ally of Germany going to do? Japan? Well, they're going to cross half the Pacific Ocean and they're going to strike at Pearl Harbor. They're going to strike the American fleet, which wasn't in the war, but they're going to hit it. And at that moment, everything changes, and then the United States enters the war. And at that point, it was the beginning of the end for Germany. So today, we're in a similar situation. We have Trump saying, you want to kill each other? Fine, go ahead. He might even pull out of NATO. The thing is, what's going to happen? We know there are false flags. We know there are others. There are many forces that would like to draw the United States into the war, including forces within the United States itself, within the American establishment, who would like to involve their country in this war. So in that case, we might see false flags, we might see provocations, all of that. So that at some point, Trump, even if he's more about business than war, well, that he is more or less forced to sign. And that's it. By the way, speaking of business and all that, you know that here in the UK, we have Reform UK, Farage's party. Sorry, my friends, these allergies again, but I'm not going to take anything and it will calm down on its own. After 2 or 3 days, it goes away. Farage's party. That party, well, was presented as an opposition party. Today, it has also joined the war camp. Today, it also wants to go to war. In fact, that's the reason why, personally, I'm going to leave the United Kingdom, because I no longer believe there's any alternative. I don't believe in it. There is no alternative. There is no awareness. People are conditioned by television. As I told you, they are connected to the television, all that. They are ready to die. You know, the United Kingdom today is giving away islands that belong to it. It's giving them to Mauritius, to the island of Mauritius. It's giving them away. And on top of that, giving up its sovereignty and also giving money on top of it, making a 100-year commitment. Today, we have commitments in the United Kingdom and such a large checkbook that we're committing to pay over 100 years. We did this with Ukraine and now with Mauritius. And actually, what's extraordinary is that we're giving up lands over which we have sovereignty while we're fighting for the sovereignty of others. Remember that the story of NATO's involvement in Ukraine, in the history of Ukraine, even goes against the spirit and the articles, the codes, even of NATO. Because NATO is a defensive alliance that protects its members. Ukraine has never been a member, so there is no reason for it to get involved. This is a war that is being fought entirely outside any legal framework. You notice that it hasn't even been escalated to the level of the UN Security Council and all that. It's really something that's happening entirely outside any legal framework, with an ever faster push toward escalation. Now, something else. There are a lot of people contacting me asking me why. Why? People tell me that on my Patreon, for example. By the way, if you want, instead of just watching, you can join and take part a little in this battle that I'm fighting. Well, you can join my Patreon. I'll put the link in the comments. So, as I was saying, why? Let me tell you something quickly. You can have the following situation. Imagine you have an animal and then you have predators. Not really predators, no, parasites. A parasite comes, a mosquito, let's say. It bites the animal, takes a drop of blood, and it comes back the next day, bites the animal, takes a drop of blood. So the animal lives. Of course, it itches, it hurts, it irritates, it can get infected and all that. But it lives, it's not going to die. And the mosquito, for its part, well, it knows it'll have enough blood every day. Every day it will come and take its drop and it will leave. It can do this for years, okay? Now, let's imagine that the parasite says to itself, I'm not interested in coming back every day for a drop. I want it all at once. Today I'll show up and suck out 10 liters. I know the animal's going to die. I know that, well, by tomorrow it won't be here anymore. Yeah, but me, I want it all. Right now, I don't want to settle for just a drop of blood my whole life, okay? He's going to come with the goal of pumping 10 liters. Now, this mosquito is not alone. Many mosquitoes were content with just one drop a day. Now, if one of them sees another one sucking everything up for himself, they think anyway, the animal is dead. The animal in any case won't be here tomorrow. What we can't suck up today, well, we won't have it tomorrow. It's now or never. But so what's going to happen? Mosquitoes will think, watch out, the animal is going to die. Let's take everything. That's exactly what's happening with Europe. It means that as soon as you have parasites that are no longer in the classic parasitic mode, in the commensal mode, eating with it, well, these parasites switch to a destructive mode. I take everything now. Just one person starts, then everyone follows, all rushing in, wanting everything immediately. And at that moment, there's an acceleration. So what we're seeing today, if you will, is the plundering of Europe. Europe must be destroyed. It was billions and billions were taken. We don't even know where they are. We haven't even finished taking stock. I'm not even sure we ever will during the COVID period. Billions have been embezzled. Look at the book behind me, astrology. We have astrology. We have solar panels that we're spreading all over a country where there's no sun. We have wind turbines, we have insulation scams, we have carbon credit scams, all of that. It's just financial scams. There's nothing behind it. No ecological benefit, for example, or economic benefit. It's just small groups trying to cash in, attaching themselves to laws that are tailor-made for them, which attract them like honey attracts bees. And then they come and start siphoning off money. We have that. And today we have a war. So now, for example, von der Leyen is saying, yes, that's it. Because of the war, we're going to rearm Europe. She created a program called Rearm Europe, which is the new COVID, literally. You won't have to wait long before you start hearing stories that she's negotiating arms contracts by text, by SMS, just like she did last time. She's someone who's part of a group, right, who has no principles. So they can send you to die. Afterwards, of course, if you die, they'll give your families a made in China medal, right, and a plastic flag. And that's it. That's all. You give your best people, you give your children, you give all of that. And then what do you get? You get a medal, a nice medal, even though you can buy one on eBay. You don't need to get your child killed for that. You can, honestly, for a small amount, they sell for €3, €2.50. Lives were lost for a trinket worth €2.50, my friends. So you give that, and then they'll give you a flag. You have to reach a new level of madness. I'll end with this. I want to tell you something. Look, I live in the United Kingdom. I'm originally from Algeria. There are a lot of people who are, for example, of Pakistani or Indian origin and so on. Some were even born here. Today, they see this war, and many are much more aware. Why? Because they speak other languages, they get information from different sources and listen a little to what their families tell them, all of that. And they see that this is a war that makes no sense. It's not a war to defend their home, to defend their children, all of that. They understand that Europe is succumbing to these demons. And most of them came to get a better life, to work, to have security, all of that. They didn't come here to get killed for Keir Starmer's madness. So they see a rising hysteria, and I count myself among them, by the way. If there's a rising hysteria, what do? We're going to leave, we're going to go. Look, I'm leaving. I only have a few weeks left here. I'm out. So they're leaving. Who's going to go fight? Take a wild guess. I don't need to spell it out for you, right? So the usual suspects. We'll see the war memorials they'll have in 2030 if we even have enough left to build a war memorial. You'll see the same names, the same poor guys who died in 3945 or in 1418. Unfortunately, those are the ones who will be taken out of the gene pool. I'm just saying this, that's all. I don't want to be controversial or anything, but I'm telling you the reality. You know what I'm telling you is true. Anyway, my friends, thank you for listening to this video up to this point. I recommend my book, Astrology, on Amazon, in paperback and Kindle format. I'm sorry, my voice is a little muffled. My sinuses are all stuffed, my throat is irritated, my ears are irritated, my eyes, all of that. But I assure you, this level of allergy is just 1% of what I had about 10 years ago when I was taking more and more medication. And every season I was taking stronger and stronger ones, stronger and stronger. I started with the antihistamines you find in pharmacies. You just ask for them and they sell them to you before you even finish your sentence. And I ended up with the ones you can only get by prescription, really high dose stuff. And then they told me, yeah, maybe you'll need to move on to stronger stuff, maybe injections and all that. And that's when I woke up. I said to myself, you know what? I'm going for it to see what happens. In the end, it's really not that bad. Thank you, my friends, for listening to this video, and I'll see you in another one. See you very soon.